Alright guys, so Train here again. This is gonna have to be part 3 now, which is the spawn item function of the tutorials for the random loot generation. And I decided that at the end of the last video I decided to make this a new video because there's just too much and the other one was already at an hour. So this here is going to take a little bit of time. Mostly I just need to explain up to about right here, and then the rest of it is like just kind of a copy. So yeah. So what we're gonna do here to start is probably pull in a couple of things here. We are gonna want to make a few things. We're gonna want to make 4 arrays. Okay. Each array is going to be named after the item, like rarity or whatever. So if you want these to be purple and blue and green and whatever, like items, if you're not doing that, don't worry about it. Just make one array and set that array to have however many items you want to have. So, like if you're just making a big list of items and it's just going to have everything in it, just one big list, and it's not going to have rarities, you can just sit there and you can go in and you can make, you know, however many of these you have, you can just keep adding to this array, and you can go in there and just add every single one. Or, I mean, this is all like, I wanted to make a statement here too before I go any further. The way that this is being set up is not at runtime, right? It's being set up by you. It gives you a little bit more control over where everything's going to be in the list and stuff. But if you want to set this up and run at runtime, where all these items are populated at runtime, it's a whole different setup, and I'm not going to go into that because it takes a lot more work and everything. It's like you have to do all these, you know, you have to set this array up and do a bunch of extra stuff. So it's easier for people to just do it this way if they're beginning something like this. So this gives you the idea of what's actually happening. You can see what you're doing. You can add the items you want to put in there. And if you don't want one, if you just want to get rid of one of these, that's clearing the path. I want to get rid of that. So delete. If you want to get rid of some of the ones you added a couple extra, you can just delete those. And so each one of these is going to be an array that pulls, or that the treasure chest will pull from when it goes to create items, right? And so these are essentially class arrays, and that's what this is. This is a class of whatever weapon, right? So it's going to pick one of these every time it rolls and grabs one. It's going to grab an index, and it's going to grab the class that's there, and it's going to spawn it. And because I have different rarities, that's why I have 4 different arrays. So, pull this over here. Next, we already have the booleans. We already have the treasure chest reference. We're going to make the integers. We're going to need a rarity roll. So that is just an integer. It's going to be left at 0 to start. You don't have to put anything in it. The common loot amount roll is just going to be exactly the same. So we're going to have a rare loot amount roll. So this is if you want to set it up this way. Again, if you don't do it, if you're not doing different rarities, you would have one of these, and you'd have one. You wouldn't even have a rarity roll actually. You would just leave that off. You would have just one, and you'd have a loot amount roll, right? If you just wanted it to be one rarity, one style, it just pulls from one of those arrays. It's a one single array. You're gonna have loot amount roll. What that's gonna do is it's gonna tell the game or the treasure chest how many items you get when you roll, right? But because I'm doing it with these rarities and all this stuff, I gotta have it roll first to tell it what rarity it is, and this can all be done in different ways, but the way I'm doing it is basically like kind of simple if statements, and it's just checking percentages. It's essentially checking percentages, really, is all it's doing. So that's my rarity roll, and then these ones are like how many of that item do you get? How many common items do you get? How many rare items do you get? How many elite items and how many royal? So those happen later on after it's checked. Once it's checked to see if you get a epic item or whatever, then it says, well, how many do you get? You know, do you get one or two or three or four or whatever? Um, and so that's kind of how that works. So we're gonna make all these just like this. So you want your variables list to kind of look and resemble mine here, if not almost be perfectly exact. And each one of these arrays is going to have a list of those child classes that you put in here, so that you had for each type. So if you made elite items, or not elite, but epic items or whatever, all your epic items are going to go in this list, and you just keep adding them until they're all, uh, in there. Rares are going to be the same. Just put all your rare items in there. Common items are going to have the array. You're going to have all your common, and these are all the children. The ones that have been named, right? All the ones that you've already put a name on or whatever, that you've already uh, done. But the thing is that because we haven't set up the actor yet, this isn't going to be there. And so I kind of should have mentioned that from the beginning. You're not going to have these because we haven't set up the actor. But I just wanted to do the treasure chest and all this stuff first, because the actor, like the actor that's spawning the blueprint, is like one of the biggest things, and it does all this work to generate random stats and stuff, and so like that's gonna take a bunch of time. So I wanted to get you guys feet wet with like this more simple stuff, and then when we get the items thing, you can add all those children. You can go in and you can fill these arrays. For right now, these arrays are going to be empty in your guys' project. You don't have anything in there. They'll be zeroed out, whatever. But when you do create, once we get the actor and you create them all, and you have all these different classes, you're going to go in there. You're going to go into your item database that you'll make, and you'll start making these different classes or whatever it is that you want to do. You'll make all your items. You'll take these items, and those will have names, and those will be what you put in there. In every single one of these, they'll have a different one, and that'll be your whole list, right? So there you go. So bear with me, guys. I know it kind of sucks that you don't have the items to put in this, to put in these arrays right now and make it all work. But trust me, you don't want to get into the actual actor, the pickup actor yet, because it's a lot of blueprint stuff, and it's gonna get interesting. So, all right. So on this, now that you kind of have all these variables set up, and you understand that we don't have items in these yet, okay, you can go from here, from the spawn item initialization function node here, and branch off, check to see. First thing we want to do is check to see if it's looted. If it's not looted, right, if you click on the chest and it's already been looted, we don't want it to do anything, right? We don't want it to keep spawning items. So, or if you clicked on the button, there's not going to be a button because the button disappears. But if you click on that chest mesh, we don't want it to keep spawning items. So the first thing we do is check to see if it's been looted. And if it's false, we set it to looted, right? So that was what kind of takes care of that. So now when you click on a mesh, you can only click on it once. It's only going to spawn loot one time. It's not going to keep going and putting, every time you click it. And then the next part here is we need to, I'm going to open this up here. The next part is we need to actually generate a random number that will give us our rarity roll. So we put in a random integer from range. So random integer from range, right? That's what we want. From range, or in range from stream. I'm pretty sure that's, nope, not from stream. See, we don't want from stream. We want random integer, integer in range. That is what we want. In range. So you get one of those, you're going to put 1 in the minimum and 100 in the maximum, and this one should be, yeah, so you should be able to, it's basically going to roll from 1 to 100, right? We're going to go from 1 to 100. It's going to give us a number randomly from 1 to 100. That's 100%, right? That's a full option, right? So basically, we've got that, and we store it by promoting it to a variable. So, but we've already made that variable. So you can drag that out, set it here, and just connect that to it. And you're going to run this to that. Right? So that's essentially how that works. You could have promoted, like I could have waited and promoted all these, but I think it's easier if we just set them all up first. So you guys have everything already ready. So now that we have a role, and we've set that role value at runtime, this will be whatever that rolls, right? It could be 80, could be 40, it could be 10, it could be 1, it could be 100. It doesn't really matter what it is because it's going to be right here, and we know that. And so we're going to do a sequence, and the first thing, and well, basically this is where we could do a couple different things, but right now we're doing it the way I have it set up, which is just to use if statements. So the first sequence is we want to go through, and it checks what number is rolled, basically. It has to say, well, what number was rolled? And if it's a common item, it should be, like, honestly, you should probably get it more, or I mean, if it's a common item, you probably want it to drop any time that it's greater than 0, right? You want common items to almost drop every time. Which it doesn't mean that they're going to drop every time, because further along I'm going to show you why. But this is saying that, like, if it's greater than, the roll is greater than 0, which it will always be greater than 0, okay? Because it's set here between 1 and 100. So 0 is not in there, so it won't never roll 0. Okay, so it's always going to be better than, oops, fuck, I didn't mean to hit play. It's always going to be better than 0. So we know that this functionality is always going to continue. The thing is that when it gets over here, it determines what actually happens later. But let's go back down to this. So off of the 1 stem, we're going to connect to another branch that is going to check for the blue quality items. And those, I put them at 51. So like you basically have a 50% chance to get a blue item, right? So if you roll better than 50%, you're gonna have a chance to get blue items. And then with the next node on the thing, we're gonna run down here and go to the epic items. And those ones I did 20% chance, so it has to be greater than 80. So if it's, actually I did greater than 81, and I don't know why. 51, and it's the same thing. If it's greater than, this is wrong. Don't listen to this, by the way. This should be like 51 if I'm going to do that, right? And this should be 81. So it's close to a 20%. It's like a 19%. It's like a 19% chance to get an epic, right? And then the reason why I have this is legendary right here. This bottom one is legendary. So you've got all 4 of them. You've got common, rare, epic, and then legendary right here, or whatever. And that one, you can change that to whatever value you want. I have it set to 1 right now because I wanted it to pop up a legendary every time, basically, or at least have the chance of it. But when you really want the legendary to be like super hard to get, you would want that value to be like something like 99 or some shit like that, right? Some really low fucking number. Or I mean, really low percentage. So if it rolls greater than 99 out of 100, right? It's only rolling between 1 and 100. So if it rolls 99, basically, if it rolls 100, that 1%, you're gonna get a legendary. You can make those legendaries more spawn more often. And my dog is sitting here like hanging out. I think she wants some food, so I gotta feed her in a minute. But we're gonna be done with this video shortly, so I can do that in a minute. So essentially, you can kind of understand how this works. If you want to do it out of 1,000 right here, it would give you more numbers to choose from. It'll make the rarity. It'll be the same percentage, but it'll basically make it gives you like more options. So if you wanted it to be 990, oops, you could say out of 9, if you roll better than 990, right, or whatever, then essentially you have 10 times that you could possibly, you can have 10 different numbers that you can possibly get one of those legendaries that it can roll. If you go with, but that's out of 1,000, so 10 out of 1,000 chances to get something good. Now, this is all stuff that's like if you know numbers and you know percentages and you know random, or if you know percentages really well, then don't worry about it. You'll be good. You can figure out some good roll numbers and stuff like that. But you can even take those numbers, make them larger even. So what we're going to do now is from that position, let's just go and do this for the common, because they're all going to be exactly the same, kind of, in a way. But in the common one, this is where I'll explain it. We're going to go back over here, and we're going to set up how we get the information's location and make it transform and stuff to set where the item goes, right, where we spawn it. So we need to actually do that. So we're going to set up this block of blueprints right here. We're going to grab our treasure chest box. We want our spawn box. So we're going to grab the spawn box from right there. Okay, that one right there. And that's the one right here. So you can make that thing however big you want, kind of, but it's better to keep it kind of small if you can help it. And then you grab it, you put it right here, and then we're going to we're going to get scale box. So get scale box, right, and extent. So we want the whole scale box extent, and then we're going to take that, we're going to break the vector, and we're going to take the x and the y, and we're going to make those random float range, and we're going to say multiply that x by a -2, a -2, and put that in your minimum, and then take the x and put that in your maximum. And then for this one, this y basically is the same type of thing. We're going to take the y and we're going to multiply that by -3, and we're going to put that in your minimum, and we're going to put the y in your maximum. Okay? So once we've got that done, we can make a vector again. So this making a vector, you can pull from either of those and just say make vector, and you want it to be, I think it's going to be like that. So just the first one, make vector, and then you can connect the y to it. So you don't have to like make it for both of them. Just make one of them and do that. And then z stays at 0. Z doesn't get brought across because we want the z to be 0. Only because the plane of z, like that's the other thing. If you wanted to have it like go up and down, and for example, if you were on a hill or something, then you could do something where it can randomly associate itself with like your floor level, and check that. But because my floor is like 1 level, it's not going to go any higher or lower than 0. I just keep it at 0. And then from there, you want to go. You got to go back here, grab your box, drag that out, and get socket location. So set up your socket location, and get this node out there. The name of the socket is not going to be. Actually, wait a second. Why did I have that if there's no socket? Just do this. I can't remember why I don't have a name in the socket, but I'm not going to. Yeah, there's no socket, but I'm not going to have anything in there. Just make sure that you do this because I know I'm pretty sure that needs to be there. And you're going to add those together. So you're going to make the vector, and you're going to take that, add it to the socket location, and then you're going to take that and you're going to make transform. So that just drags off, make transform like that, and then that's what it should look like, right? And then you're going to leave You're going to leave the rotation and the scale. Well, the scale actually could be. I put the scale, so here's uh, make transform, right? So make transform. Scale's at 1. I put it at 0.5 because my actors were a little too big. So I scaled them down. And you don't have to do that if your actors are smaller. Like I can take my actor and I can make not this actor. I can make the actor, the actual, the actor, the item, the gear item actor can be smaller. And then I don't have to scale it. I can leave it at 1 or whatever. But for now, it's whatever. It doesn't really matter. But I scaled mine down right here. So that's the only reason why I put values in there. The rotation stays at 0, 0, 0. It doesn't matter. And then you take that return and you put it out to a reroute node right here, because we're going to be using that later to set the location of each of the spawned actors. So so back over here, we've got our let's say we've got our common items, right? It's definitely going to spawn some common items. Okay, so it comes up here and it says, all right, well, how many common items are we going to get? And so this number right here is your common loot amount, right? So you've definitely acquired common items, the ability to get them, but how many are you going to get? And the number is here is another random number between 1 and 100, and basically this this is kind of the way this is set up is kind of like whatever. Like it doesn't have to be like this. You could do 1 and 6. You could do 1 and 7, and then just for each number, it could give you for each number it can give you an item, right? Because right now the way I have it set up, it's doing percentages again. So I have it set up so where if it's greater than 0, you always get 1. You always get 1. It spawns this actor. But if it's greater than 21, then you get a second one. So it's working off of percentages again to continue to spawn the second one, to continue to spawn the third one. It has to be better than 41. Spawning the fourth one, and the fifth one, and the sixth one. So if you have really good chances, or really good but the reason why I didn't do it the other way, like if you did 1 and 7 or 1 and 6 and you wanted 6 items to spawn, you could do that, but you just have to make sure that you set this up pretty much the same. So you'd say like if it's greater than 0, you're going to get this one, right? Because then it's going to continue to flow through, and then you check to see if common is greater than 1. If it's greater than 1, then you get the second item, right? If it's greater than 2, then you get the third item. If it's greater than 3, you get the fourth item. If it's greater than 5 or 4, you get the fifth item, and so on. If it's greater than 5, then you get the sixth item. It's just that when you do it that way, you have less numbers to play with, and a random number generator from 1 to 6 is more likely to give you a higher number than a random number generator from 1 to 100. So if you want it to be harder for them to get items, you would go with a larger number right here and just set the percentages accordingly. But all it's essentially doing is it's coming through here, you're setting that common loot amount, and that's the same on all of them, right? It's the same type of variable. We set that integer. We do the same thing for all of them. Grab an integer, get a random value, set the integer that's goes with that. So now the thing is that it randomly picks. This is just setting up your random how many you're gonna get. Okay, not what you're gonna get, just how many. But we know that you've got one. Let's say we know we've got one spawned because we've got greater than 0, obviously. So we're spawning an actor. We take that that transform, that random transform, and we plug that in right there. So now we have the transform of where it's going to spawn, and we set this to try to adjust location, but always spawn. Make sure that that's always like that. And then, so all we do now is we take this number right here, and if you add, this is another random integer, so we're going to make another one of these or duplicate it. You can just Control W, and you can make that. And so this is the thing that actually tells you what item you're going to get out of the array. So we have our common item array right here, right? And it has 5 or 6 items, 7 items actually. So if we take that array and we grab a random index out of it, right? It's going to give us that random index. It's going to say, well, whatever value is at 2, I know we're going to get an item. It's going to grab the index of 2 and say that's what you get. That's what we're spawning right there. We're spawning 2. So so it's the same again. It's the same on the other ones. Like you put the random integer. Just make sure that when you set this up, that this number right here, 6, is the same number that is in this array at the bottom. So if you have 16 items, you need to update that to 16. Otherwise, it's not going to be picking from all of them. It's only going to be picking from the ones that you have it up to. If these are completely empty, there's no need to obviously put 16 in there, right? Because that's worthless. So then I can go in here and say, oh, I don't want those because I don't need them because they're empty and I don't have anything to fill them with. But eventually, you would want them all in there, and that's how that would work. So now I need to go back to 6 because I've only got 6 again at the bottom, right? So from 0 to 6, because this one is going from 0 and grabbing the indexes. So this one doesn't go from 1 to 6, it goes from 0 to 6. Because these are the actual indexes. And so once you have that information, it's grabbed the item, it's put it in here, and it's spawned it. Then it's a matter of just saying, well, do I want to do that again? Okay. Then if you get greater than 21 on that common loot amount, this roll, if this was better than 21, then we'll let you have another item, and we'll grab it from the random, from here, and it'll, in fact, that's spawning 1, it's getting an index. Every time it does this, so every time it comes through, it's going to grab a random number, I think. I hope. It might not. It's supposed to be because it does work, but it might not be. But I think it does. So, because I know it does actually. I know it does work, right? So, if this, let me check something real quick here. Alright, let's go over here and let's click on that common. Yeah, because it works. It grabs you a random number out of the thing, or a random item out of the array. So out of the common array, it's going to grab a random number every time. And then you just keep doing that. How many do you want? Or, what's the number? What's the percentage for the third item? What's the percentage for the fourth item? And so forth and so on, until you don't want any more items to spawn. I only go 6 common items at the very most. If they rolled, to get the common item, and then they rolled a 100 right here, they're going to get all 6 items because that's how many common items you would get. Like it's better than all the values, right? 91 is the last one, so all that. You do that same thing with you just copy that data and you just bring it down here and you set it up exactly the same way, but you use the rare loot integer, so they can all be different because they have to drop at the same time. And you do the exact same thing. Better than 0. If you want it to be a different number, it can be. Better than whatever number here, better than whatever number here, better than whatever number. And you always use the one that's according to it. So rare for the rares, epic for the epic, and epic here. And for this one, you're going to get the epic array, the rare array, and you're just going to set those up. And you're going to use however many are in that particular array. This one has 5, so it goes from 0 to 5. This one has this one has 5, so you use 0 to 5. The legendary one has 14. 0 to 13, right? But I don't have them all in there because I didn't update this, right? So what you actually want it to be is 0 to 13 because I added a couple later and I forgot to update that. That's why I always say remember to update with that information. That's something you should write down. If you ever make a game out of this, you want to write that down, like remember to update these values right here, because if you forget, it's not going to ever get the ones down here whatever's past the number that you have in here, it'll never pull from them, and so you'll never ever be able to get them. And so essentially that's how that works. It spawns all the items accordingly, and that's it. Now, we don't have any items yet. Of course, like I said before, there's no items because you guys don't have them yet. And I can go over that in the next video. That'll be like the... maybe I'll probably set that up and then we'll do the widgets for them because might as well get the functionality for them. So I'll do that in the next video. I probably won't be able to get done until, I'm going to say until like later, maybe next weekend or something like that. I work all week, so it's hard for me to have time to do anything during the week. But essentially, if you have any questions about any of this stuff here, you can always ask me and specify like the time frame of the video, what part of the video you're having trouble with, and I can answer any questions. So I always like to use reroute nodes to make sure things look clean and stuff like that. And so that's that. We already got all this done. We got all the spawn item function done. We got all the widget interaction stuff done. And that again, these brush colors and things were just not stuff you needed to worry about really. Okay, so that pretty much sums up the video for spawning. And I hope you guys are kind of digging this and getting into it now and actually being successful at getting all your stuff set up here. But again, if you have any trouble, just don't hesitate to ask any questions. I will see you guys next time on part 4 of the video. Probably next weekend, like I said, probably next weekend I'll be able to get it done. So I'll catch you guys later. Thanks for watching.